When you think of shonen anime and manga, there are many great authors. Names like Masashi Kishimoto, Hajime Isayama, Yoshihiro Togashi, Kohei Hirokoshi, Hirohiko Araki, and of course, Akira Toriyama, are a few recognizable names. You know their works and no introduction is needed for all of them. However, one name I would personally add to that list is Atsushi Ohkubo, the author of Fire Force and Soul Eater. Ohkubo is an underappreciated author, and the same can be said for his work in my opinion. With the third season of the Fire Force anime announced in May, the manga finished in April this year, and with Ohkubo potentially retiring from the industry, I want to take a moment to celebrate and look back at his work. Let's start with a little history on Ohkubo himself. Atsushi Ohkubo was born on September 20th, 1979 in Japan. He admits he wasn't a good student at school and often gets distracted. He knew he was a pretty good artist and decided he wanted to use his artistic abilities to tell stories. After completing high school, he went to mangaka school. He worked as an assistant to Rondo Ayamine, the author of Get Backers, for about 2 years before deciding to go on his own. He entered a competition hosted by Square Enix, where he won and had his first manga, Biichi, published in Square Enix's Gangan magazine in 2001. After Biichi, he worked on Soul Eater in 2003. Soul Eater started out as 3 one-shot stories in the magazine. Readers were interested in his story and wanted to see more. Those 3 one-shots serve as an introduction to Soul Eater, and about a year later, Soul Eater was officially published in Gangan. He worked on Soul Eater for about 9 years before it concluded in August 2013. In the middle of those 9 years, he worked on a spin-off, Soul Eater Not, which takes place before the events of Soul Eater. After Soul Eater, Ohkubo worked on Fire Force. It was published in Weekly Shonen Magazine in September 2015 and concluded in February 2022. This is supposedly his last work when he announced it in an author's commentary in the 23rd volume of Fire Force. This is where Ohkubo's career is at right now. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of his art in the future, and if you follow him on Twitter, he's just living his best life right now. He's traveling, playing Elden Ring, and showing off his cooking. I think he deserved this after putting in 20 years in the manga industry. But let's take a look back at the series that started his career, Biichi. Biichi was Ohkubo's first manga and was a fairly simple one to understand. It's about a boy named Shotaro, who is a Dokeshi, a human who can tap into more than 30% of his brains to do amazing feats. However, the drawback is Dokeshis need to do a very specific task to maintain it every day. Think of it as their maintenance cost for their abilities. In Shotaro's case, he needs to do one good deed every day. Shotaro's power allows him to take out attributes and abilities of specific animals while he's gnawing on their bone. For example, he can give himself a dog sense of smell if he is gnawing on a dog's bone. He keeps various types of animal bones in his backpack, which includes a snake, a cat, a hedgehog, pig, and a bird. Shotaro is trying to find his best friend Emi, and he goes on a journey to do so. He meets people along the way that helps him on his journey. Biichi's world is pretty unique and serves as a template for Soul Eater and Fire Force. For fans of the series, you'll feel right at home. Ohkubo said one of his inspirations was the American director, Tim Burton, saying he finds Burton's gothic universe funny and fascinating. You can definitely see that here, and especially in Soul Eater. The characters are drawn pretty well, even if it was Ohkubo's early work. Shotaro has that stereotypical shonen protag look with a kind-hearted personality. He isn't that interesting, but I think he's alright, considering Ohkubo has protagonists with more depth later in his work. Biichi is pretty easy to follow, and isn't that deep for a shonen. And for how short it was, only being 4 volumes long, I think the pacing was fine, and it told the story it wanted to tell. Biichi laid the groundwork and foundation for Soul Eater and Fire Force. With experience gained from Biichi, Soul Eater was going to be what really made his career take off. Soul Eater takes place at the Death Weapon Meister Academy, located in Nevada. Yes, Soul Eater takes place in a fictional America. The Meister and their weapon partner have a goal to absorb 99 evil human souls and 1 witch soul in order to become a Death Scythe, a powerful weapon that can be used by Lord Death, the head of the school and the literal god of death. The 3 lead characters are trying to accomplish this task as they face witches and demonic beings. It's a fairly simple premise, but it gets deeper as the series progresses. The series draws from Harry Potter. I mean, there's a literal school for young kids with special abilities, and the 3 lead characters are pretty much Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And of course, it drew inspiration from Tim Burton's animated works, if you can't already tell. Soul Eater came at the time when the big 3 were at the height of their powers, and there were a lot of anime that demanded your attention. It was one of the biggest hits that year and got good reviews from fans and critics. It was never going to dethrone the big three, but it was easily one of the best at the time. Reviewers praised it for its colorful, unique art style and humor. It helps that the anime was also done by Studio Bones, a highly acclaimed studio that is known for quality animation and visually impressive fight scenes in anime. While the anime did follow the manga up to a certain point and got an original ending, as most anime received at the time, I don't think it hurt the franchise overall. I think it ended fine, even if it introduced concepts and plot threads that only continued in the manga. As for the ending in the manga, I thought it was pretty good, as everything comes full circle, mirroring the introductions of our heroes in the first few chapters and leaving the readers with a message of facing your fears with courage. There are a lot of things that made Soul Eater stand out at the time of its release. As mentioned earlier, the series is colorful, has a unique art style, and humor. But what made it stand out to me is the lead character, Maka is a girl. While it is uncommon to see a girl to be a lead character in shonen anime in the modern age, back then, it was rather different. Maka was created as a response to how most shonen manga mostly had male protagonists. Ohkubo said he paired her with a male partner, Soul, to show equal representation of gender. He also does this with the other two protagonists, Death the Kid and Black Star. He also gave Maka a scythe because it was unique and wanted to make Maka stand out on her own and not draw influence from other people's characters. Maka is a strong character in terms of how she's written and presented. She's smart, strong, compassionate, and mature for a 13-year-old girl. She has a lot of great traits that doesn't make her a Mary Sue character, as she has an equal amount of vulnerability and flaws she deals with throughout the series. One of the issues she has to deal with is her view on men. She has a negative view on them because her dad cheated on her mom and this caused a divorce. This, understandably, caused her to have a negative view on men, believing they only look at women for their sex appeal. This was shown when her partner, Soul, was captivated by Blair the Cats. Which, I mean, yeah, I get it, but come on, Soul. You gotta put your homies first. She does overcome this issue with Soul, but has other problems with him. As mentioned earlier, Maka and Soul are partners. They need to be in sync together to be effective in combat. She feels that Soul has been carrying them in fights. She tries to get stronger on her own, without taking Soul's feelings into consideration. Maka works on her flaws throughout the series, and you see her mature and grow alongside Soul. I think Ohkubo did a good job writing her. Maka had realistic vulnerabilities a girl her age would have. Her dynamic with Soul is believable. You can see they care for each other without making it romantic. I am sure they have been shipped many times over by fans, but I'm honestly happy to see Ohkubo didn't make them canonically have romantic feelings for each other. This is also confirmed by Ohkubo in an interview, saying he has no intentions of making the main cast have a romantic relationship with each other, outside of a trusting relationship. Maka's final message to the readers of facing your fears with courage, and you can gain courage from others, makes it worthwhile to see their growth together across the series. But, if Maka isn't your favorite character, Ohkubo got you covered. As mentioned earlier, there are 3 pairs of protagonists. You want to see a ninja beat the crap out of people? Black Star and Tsubaki got you covered. They're a great pair, and they fight as a team that reminds me of early Naruto, using ninja weapons, techniques, and cunning. Their dynamic together is like a little brother and big sister. Tsubaki keeps Black Star in line, as he's extremely childish and hyperactive. But you can't help but get hyped watching him fight and have a good time along the way. Black Star does give you a feeling of a traditional protagonist, as he follows the path of a warrior. A philosophy that believes in your willpower and follows a path of righteousness, and rejects selfishness and negative emotions. Basically, he's trying to become a Jedi. The opposite philosophy is the path of the demon, which values selfish desires, like a Sith. This story arc of his is fitting, seeing how he starts out as a loudmouth character who's very self-centered and always seeks praise from others. And finally, we have Death the Kid and the Thompson sisters. Like his name suggests, he is the son of Lord Death, which makes him a demigod of sorts. He's basically the rich kid at school who clearly has higher starting stats than everyone, but his dad intentionally nerfed him and has locked him out of his full potential. This was done to make him humble and humanize him. His dad wanted to see him understand what it's like to maintain balance between life and death, when he succeeds him as the god of death when he is fully matured. One thing I like about Kid is his weapons being a pair of Breda 92 FS And also, there's a very easy joke I can make about how the Topping sisters are canonically Americans and they can transfer to guns, but I won't because gun violence in America is too common. But anyways, his fighting style is gun kata, which is pretty cool to see in anime in general, although I would not recommend holding a gun in real life like he does because it's just an accident waiting to happen. There are other cool and interesting characters in Soul Eater. There is a non-binary character who has a very messed up origin story and is low-key underappreciated, a great representation of an African character that isn't a stereotype. Ohkubo himself said he noticed there weren't many African characters in manga and wanted to add one to his story. And he adds more black characters in Fire Force as well. Ohkubo is, well, pretty awesome for doing it because he wanted to. And before moving on from Soul Eater to Fire Force, let's take a look at Soul Eater Not for a moment. Ohkubo said he doesn't like to tell his stories with flashbacks or exposition dumps, something that is a trope in a lot of shonen anime. Naruto, one of my favorites, is guilty of this, but it serves to build up the world's lore and fleshes it out, if done correctly. Soul Eater Not was a roundabout way for Ohkubo to avoid those tropes. He realized that he didn't really flesh out his world as much as he hoped. Instead of doing an exposition dump or add appendices to the back of the manga, he decides to do a spin-off to do exposition dump and flesh it out. I gotta say, it's a bold move, but was it successful doing so? Well, yeah, I'd say so. Not takes place a year before the start of Soul Eater, with different casts of characters, but there are cameos from the main cast that are sprinkled in there. Just from visuals alone, you can see it looks familiar, but it has a different feel to it. The anime adaptation was also done by Studio Bones, but they also went in a completely different direction with the art, taking inspiration from Moe anime, which was very popular at the time. The lead character, Tsumugi Harudori, is a student at the Death Weapons Meister Academy, but in the Not class, the normally overcome target class, meaning they are non-combatants and are learning to control their abilities, so they can live normal everyday lives. While the 8 class, the especially advantaged talents class, is what is shown in Soul Eater, or trained to fight with their abilities. Tsumugi is a weapon, and she transferred to the DWMA to learn how to control her abilities. She's a stand-in for us, the reader. While she learns about her new setting in Death City, readers of Soul Eater can learn about the world through her. There are a lot of familiar things we see, but some of the finer details are filled in. Other familiar elements include the main villain of Not being a sibling of one of the major villains in Soul Eater. There really isn't too much to say about Not, as it didn't really make that big of an impact for me personally. It served its purpose of being a prequel and fill in some of the finer details about the world. The manga only had about 5 volumes, and the anime had a 12-episode run. If you enjoyed it, that's great. But if you haven't seen it, I suggest giving it a try still. Now finally, Fire Force. This is supposedly the final work of Ohkubo. He takes elements and lessons learned from Biichi and Soul Eater, and takes us on an awesome adventure. While it's definitely more mainstream in comparison to Soul Eater, it's a nice alternative to the current shonen anime. Of course, this isn't a dig at them. They're popular for a reason. Fire Force has a different feel from Soul Eater, but has familiar elements. There are a lot of unique looking characters, awesome fight scenes, and a cool universe. The Burton-esque inspiration has been dialed back, and has a semi-realistic world with hints of steampunk in it. A majority of the Fire Force characters have fire-based powers. This idea came from a discussion between Ohkubo and the author of Fairy Tail, Hiro Mashima. And it was most likely a joke, but hey, look what came out of it. And you might also notice that our heroes wear outfits inspired by firefighters. This was intentional. Ohkubo said in an interview that the closest things to real-life superheroes were firefighters. He wanted to create a manga to depict them as superheroes. He makes an interesting point of saying, even in a fantasy world where there is a fire, firefighters are still needed to put them out. And being a hero is what Shinra Kusakabe is trying to become. His motivation to become a hero is from a promise he made to his mom. This gives him a bit of a hero complex, making him act irrational in fights, but he's able to cool off and gather himself and reassess the situation. While his motivations are a bit simplistic, he does have layers to his character. His mom died when he was young, and he thought his brother Sho also died. This had a lifelong impact on him. People thought he killed them, as he was smiling with tears in his eyes, calling him the devil. Shinra has a nervous tic that causes him to smile. His smile is literally how he hides his feelings. He joins the Fire Force to fight the Infernals as a way to show people that he's a hero. One thing that keeps him motivated is trying to find out the truth of what happened the day when his mom died. He learns that his brother was still alive and had been abducted by the White Clad, a religious cult trying to recreate the event that had devastated the world a few hundred years ago. And this becomes his new motivation, to save Sho and become a family again. And besides seeing Shinra trying to achieve his goals, Fire Force gives us a mystery and conspiracy that has us invested. We want to know how deep the White Clad have infiltrated the Fire Force, and why they are doing this, and how our heroes will fight this threat. Ohkubo does a good job of keeping us invested and find out what's next. However, Fire Force does kind of break his rule of not using flashbacks or exposition dumps, but to Ohkubo's credit, most of the time it's used to push the plot along and to build on the world's lore. It's not like he made a spin-off to fill out the finer points in the world. Ohkubo doubles down on having a great representation in its cast, having characters that are implied to be Chinese, African, and European. On top of that, there's a lot of quirky, lovable characters, and evil characters you really want to see getting beaten up. One thing I had to give Ohkubo a lot of credit for is being able to create characters that look and stands out even when they are wearing their bunker gear. I can go on and on about his art and work, but if Fire Force is truly his last work, then for everyone who's a fan of Ohkubo's work, the way Fire Force ends is a truly great way to bookend his story. And I won't say how it ends for those that are anime only or in the middle of reading Fire Force. It's worth the ride, trust me. Ohkubo said he became a manga artist because he wanted to tell stories with his art. He more than accomplished this across his 20-year career. He has made me forever a fan of his work, but I selfishly wish he has one more story in him. But he is walking away at an all-time high, and that's something I can respect. So, Ohkubo-sensei, thank you for sharing your stories with us. A sound soul dwells within a sound mind and a sound body. Latom. I want to thank Paula Aranega for the amazing artwork she did for the video. It looks fantastic and it looks great. And please check out her stuff. I will link her socials in the description below. I want to thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. I've been having fun making these, and I've also been doing a little bit of streaming on my Twitch channel. I'll put the link in below. And yeah, I've been having fun making these. If I didn't, I probably would have stopped doing this for a while ago. And I hoped I'd earn your subscription, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.